All right, welcome back, everyone. Today we're going deep on Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula, as some know him.
A figure shrouded in myth and history.
Yeah, you sent over some excerpts from his Wikipedia page, and wow, there's a lot here.
There is.
We've got medieval power struggles, brutal executions, and the origins of a literary icon.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, so let's start with the name most people probably recognize, Dracula. Now, most associate that with, well, vampires. But that wasn't always the case, was it?
Not at all. Dracula was actually Vlad III's nickname. It means son of Dracul.
Okay.
And his father, Vlad II, was known as Vlad Dracula, or the Dragon.
I see. So a family name.
Yes, he was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a prestigious group of knights dedicated to defending Christendom.
Against the Ottomans?
Yes.
Okay, so Dracula is more about family ties than fangs. But then we got his other name, Vlad the Impaler in Romanian, no less. I think we can all guess how he got that one.
Exactly.
Nicknames are powerful.
They are, they reveal how people saw a person. Dracula shows family connections, but the Impaler is about pure fear. Which name do you think is more powerful?
The Impaler definitely sticks with you. But to understand how he got that name, we need to go back to his early life. Vlad was born between 1428 and 1431. They weren't great with birth certificates back then, so the exact date's a little fuzzy. He was born in Wallachia, which is in present-day Romania.
And we need to remember that Wallachia was in a very precarious position, caught between the expanding Ottoman Empire and the Kingdom of Hungary. Vlad's father, Vlad II, was constantly working to maintain Wallachia's independence.
Yeah, and speaking of Vlad II, he made a decision that would really have a profound impact on his son's life. He sent Vlad and his younger brother Radu to the Ottoman court as hostages.
What a childhood, huh?
Hostage situations were common diplomatic tools back then, but undeniably harsh. Imagine, being ripped from your family and forced to live with your enemies as a kid. It would definitely leave a mark on you.
I can't even imagine. Do you think that experience shaped his later ruthlessness? Possibly. Seeing the intrigues and brutality of the Ottoman court firsthand must have had an effect on his worldview.
So did this set him on the path to becoming, well, the Impaler?
Perhaps, but we have to remember that he was also a product of his time. The 15th century was a brutal era.
Right, of course.
And violence was, well, an accepted part of life.
Okay, so let's talk about how this all shaped the ruler he became. Vlad had 3 reigns as voivode of Wallachia. That's basically the ruler, kind of like a prince or duke. His first reign in 1448 was really brief. He was backed by the Ottomans, but he quickly lost to a rival, Vladislav II.
This really highlights the volatile political climate of Wallachia. Alliances were constantly changing. Rulers were, well, deposed and replaced often.
Right. After losing his first reign, Vlad was forced into exile. He spent several years bouncing around seeking support from various factions. You gotta admire his persistence.
He was observing different political systems, building alliances, learning the art of warfare. He was constantly scheming, plotting his return.
And return he did. In 1456, this marked his second reign, and things get a lot more intense here. This time he had Hungarian support. And he wasted no time in consolidating his power. He really targeted the boyars, the powerful noble families, because he saw them as a threat.
His methods were, well, brutal to say the least. Hundreds, maybe thousands of boyars executed, often by impalement.
It sent a message for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Don't mess with Vlad.
But his brutality wasn't just aimed at internal rivals. He also clashed with the Transylvanian Saxons, a powerful German-speaking merchant class who supported his rivals.
The Saxons played a huge role in the region. Their accounts of Vlad's cruelty are some of the most vivid and disturbing we have. But we have to consider, they were his enemies.
So maybe some bias and exaggeration,
Yes,
like reading a history book written by the victor.
We need to consider multiple perspectives, especially with someone like Vlad.
So we've got internal conflicts, external conflicts, and a reputation for brutality that's spreading. But this is just the beginning. Vlad's most famous conflict, the one that solidifies his reputation as the Impaler. That was his war with the Ottoman Empire.
That brings us to one of the most chilling images in history. The Forest of the Impaled. But we'll save that for next time.
Welcome back. Last time we left off with Vlad facing off against the Ottoman Empire, which sounds a lot like David and Goliath, to be honest.
It does, it really does.
You've got Vlad, this Wallachian prince, going up against Mehmet II, the guy who conquered Constantinople and ruled a massive empire.
Yeah, this wasn't just a border skirmish. This was a clash of titans.
With the fate of Wallachia hanging in the balance.
Exactly. Mehmet saw Vlad as a threat and demanded he submit and pay tribute.
But Vlad wasn't one to back down, especially when it came to independence. So how did he respond?
He had Mehmet's envoys impaled.
Wow, okay.
Not the most diplomatic response.
It definitely sends a message.
Oh.
But was it, a smart one?
Well, it showed Vlad wasn't intimidated by Mehmet, but it also escalated the conflict.
To a point of no return.
Right. Mehmet was furious and launched a full-scale invasion in 1462.
With a massive army. Right.
Huge. Some estimates put it at over 100,000 troops.
That's a lot to go up against. Vlad's army was much smaller.
Outnumbered, maybe 10 to 1.
So what was his strategy?
He knew he couldn't win a conventional battle, so he adopted what's called the scorched earth strategy.
Okay.
As the Ottomans advanced, Vlad's forces retreated. They burned villages, poisoned wells, destroyed anything useful.
To deny the enemy supply.
Exactly. And it made the countryside a wasteland.
It's a kind of psychological warfare, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine marching through that, not knowing when or where the next attack's coming from.
Morale would be destroyed.
So Vlad used guerrilla tactics, too, right?
Yes, surprise attacks on supply lines, isolated units, that sort of thing.
Harassing the enemy, wearing them down.
Right. And then there was the night attack.
At Targovia, what happened there?
So in the dead of night, Vlad led a raid on the Ottoman camp.
A sneak attack.
Yes, the aim was to kill Mehmet.
Wow, a decapitation strike.
They infiltrated the camp, caused chaos, even killed some high-ranking officials.
We almost pulled it off?
Almost, but not quite.
What do you think would have happened if he had succeeded?
It's hard to say for sure. It would have thrown the empire into chaos, might have bought Wallachia sometime, but probably wouldn't have stopped the Ottomans forever.
So, the raid wasn't a complete success.
No, Vlad didn't reach Mehmed's tent.
He got away.
But Vlad left a reminder. A forest of the impaled,
Thousands of prisoners of war.
along with any Wallachian boyars who collaborated with the Ottomans.
Impaled on stakes outside Targovia.
A truly gruesome spectacle, intended to break the enemy's spirit.
That image is, it's brutal.
It is. It really highlights Vlad's understanding of psychology.
And cruelty.
Yes, but his tactics were effective. They slowed the Ottoman advance, but at a terrible cost.
What do you mean?
His cruelty, it turned many of his own people against him.
So even in victory, there were seeds of defeat.
Yeah, it's a tragic irony.
So Vlad's reign was a whirlwind of battles, betrayals, bloodshed. But this isn't the end, is it?
Not quite. He was eventually betrayed and imprisoned by one of his allies,
Wait, an ally? Who?
Matthias Corvinus, the king of Hungary.
But he supported Vlad's second reign.
He did.
So much for loyalty among allies. What happened to Vlad after he was captured?
He was imprisoned in Hungary for 14 years,
14 years.
a captive in the kingdom that once supported him.
But even in captivity, his legend grew, right?
It did. This is when those gruesome stories about him started spreading.
The stories that would connect him with vampires,
Exactly.
imprisoned, betrayed, and the subject of dark legends.
But that's not the end of Vlad's story.
Welcome back to our deep dive on Vlad the Impaler. We've covered his rise to power, his wars, that forest of the impaled, and his betrayal by Matthias Corvinus of Hungary. But Vlad's story, well, it takes another turn.
It does. After 14 years as a captive, Vlad was released from prison.
14 years, wow.
It makes you wonder what he was thinking all that time.
Right, plotting revenge, regretting his past.
Or just biding his time, waiting for a chance to, reclaim everything.
So how'd he get out?
Yeah,
Escape. Pardon.
it's not entirely clear, but Corvinus played a part.
The guy who imprisoned him.
It seems Corvinus needed Vlad's military skills again.
To fight the Ottomans.
In Bosnia this time.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend, huh?
Even if that friend is notorious for impaling people.
So Corvinus put aside his personal feelings.
Realpolitik often wins out. He recognized Vlad's value as a commander.
And Vlad, well, he was eager to get back to fighting.
It seems so.
So Vlad finds himself back in Wallachia, fighting alongside his former captor. Was he, a changed man after prison, or was he the same Vlad?
There's nothing to suggest that prison softened him.
Really?
Reports in the Times say he was still brutal, impaling prisoners, anyone suspected of collaborating.
Some habits die hard, especially in dealing with enemies.
Perhaps he felt it was the only way to survive back then.
Or maybe prison just hardened him even more.
It's certainly possible.
But even though he was ruthless, his skills were undeniable.
Oh, absolutely.
He was key in several victories against the Ottomans. He even managed to briefly regain the throne of Wallachia in 1476.
With help from Hungary and Moldavia.
But it was short-lived, right?
Yes, he was killed in battle that same year.
Against Ottoman-backed forces.
Right.
How did he die? Any details?
That's where things get murky. Accounts vary.
Oh,
Some say he was betrayed by his own men.
no way.
Others say assassinated.
After all that, to die like that
There's even a story he was mistaken for a Turk by his own soldiers
and accidentally killed.
in the chaos of battle.
Wow, what a way to go. So much about his life is clear, but his death is still a mystery. Speaking of mysteries, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. Vampires. How did a 15th century prince become connected to, the world's most famous bloodsucker?
That takes us from history into literature and legend. It all started with Bram Stoker's novel Dracula in the late 19th century.
Yeah.
Stoker needed a name for his count, one that evoked, nobility and terror.
And he landed on Dracula.
Inspired by Vlad the Impaler.
From impaling enemies to inspiring a vampire, how'd that happen?
Stoker was probably drawn to those dark legends that surrounded Vlad. The stories about cruelty, blood, impalement.
Right. A punishment with symbolic connections to vampirism.
It fit perfectly with his gothic horror.
So Stoker took those historical bits, those whispers of legend, and created an icon, one we're still talking about over a century later.
Exactly. Vlad the Impaler, the historical figure, is complicated. But Dracula, the fictional vampire, he's pure imagination, a symbol of our deepest fears.
And it's incredible how those two figures, separated by centuries, are linked.
You can't think of Dracula without thinking of Vlad.
It shows the lasting power of myth and legend.
Absolutely.
Vlad the Impaler, a brutal tyrant, a skilled leader, a defender of his people, and, the inspiration for Dracula.
It's been quite a deep dive.
It has. Thanks for sending these sources over and letting us explore this with you.